Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about a woman named Mayra Ramirez. Some of you may have heard about her. She made history recently because she became the first U.S. recipient of a double lung transplant due to this coronavirus. She had to get it replaced. And it was a double lung transplant. Now, thing about it is I'm going to talk about some placements in her natal chart and some transits that may have been tied into this. Now, I mean, this is something maybe nothing short of miraculous. She obviously, made history as far as this goes. There was some blog online, it may have been on the New York Times blog, but it's that she had stated that if she was somewhere else, she thought that the doctors would have just given up on her and she would have passed away. But anyway, one thing is okay. She is Sun in Pisces, uh, birthday March 2nd, 1992. And her moon is, I had to improvise, of course, and do a solar/sunrise chart because I don't have the time of birth, of course. It puts her sun at Pisces and her moon in Aquarius. And the sun in Pisces, of course, is no. She obviously has certain susceptibility to the coronavirus, be COVID-19, because the sun in Pisces, obviously, it's not known for robust immune system and as far as resistance to diseases. And her sun is in the sign that is associated with diseases that can't be eradicated or cured. Now, at this time, based on the solar sunrise chart, she had transit Neptune in the first house, and having transit Neptune in, you're talking about the first house, the physical body. She was out for as far as I would say, I guess it was a coma for 6 weeks, unconscious for like 6 weeks. She was surviving on a ventilator. Neptune, of course, can be associated with comas, and you're talking about the first house of the physical body. So, and really, and you think about it too, transit Neptune at the time, you're talking about around 8 degrees from the sun. Now, I know when you're talking about conjunctions with transits, you're looking at 2 or 3 degrees, but we don't know if planets aren't receiving a certain vibration, even if something is like 8 degrees away. Neptune is about comas. It can be connected again with disease. The sun, of course, is associated with the physical body. And another thing too, she had stated she was having nightmares at this time. She currently has transit Pluto not far from her natal Neptune, so it's not surprising there were dreams involving death. Neptune, of course, can be associated with, you're talking about Pluto being in transit, Pluto being in fairly close proximity to her natal Neptune. And right there, that could be about, could manifest in dreams pertaining to death, and Neptune being in Neptune and being in natal Neptune in Capricorn, of course, ones that can be very depressing and ones that have certain sadness and causing despondency. So it's really not surprising that this was happening at this time with her. Now, natally, another thing, going to her moon being in Aquarius, you're talking about the moon can be connected with the public, and sometimes it could be public recognition. It's not surprising that she's attained something in the public that was very something connected with something very innovative and unique. This was a first uh, time, again, the U.S. as far as the U.S. recipient for a double lung transplant. And another thing is I noticed too. Saturn. You're talking about in her chart too, having Mars conjunct Saturn could be, I mean, that could manifest in unusual, as far as limitations with one's vitality, and ones that could be of an unusual nature. And another thing, too, looking at her chart, also at this time she had transit Chiron hitting the first house in the solar sunrise chart. And when you have transit Chiron in the first house, sometimes that can manifest in some kind of physical issues and suffering. And being in Aries, it wouldn't surprise me if there was something associated uh, where she was going through as far as fevers and headaches, because that, of course, can be symptoms of the coronavirus. Now, she does have Gemini. This puts Gemini on the cusp of the fourth house in the solar sunrise chart, and shows that the end of life can be connected with some kind of lung-related issue. Now, it's interesting because her life was actually saved as the result of a double lung transplant. Now, another thing, too, and you look at the fourth house can also be associated with the unconscious, because the fourth house in astrology does correspond with the zodiac sign Cancer. And at this time, she did have Gemini energy hitting that fourth house, the north node in Gemini. When you're talking about the north node in transit, it can involve issues that one may have to confront or address. And this was getting something, I mean, Gemini is associated with the lungs, something associated with the lungs that took place, of course, when she was unconscious. And being, again, the fourth house does correspond with the zodiac sign Cancer in astrology, and it's ruled by the moon, and that, of course, can be connected with the unconscious. Now, also at this time, I mean, well, looking at her natal chart, and the fact that she has Uranus conjunct Neptune is not surprising, because she was involved in something that was actually very unique, very innovative, a first that was associated with the coronavirus. Neptune can be about diseases, and Uranus, of course, could be about things that are very unique, progressive, and innovative. And she has Uranus conjunct her Neptune in her natal chart. And transit Pluto, again, is not far from the natal Neptune, so it's not surprising there was a surgical procedure in connection or conjunction with this. Now, another thing, too, I know she does have in the solar sunrise chart, she has Pluto in Scorpio at 22 degrees in the 8th house. So it's not surprising there was she was involved in a surgical procedure associated with a virus. 22 degrees, of course, is a critical degree in astrology. This was something that was very serious and very life-threatening, something that could have been potentially perilous. So anyway, I don't really have much more to say about it than what I've already talked about. She also has, well, she has in her chart as well, she has transit Sun, making a transit Sun at this time is not far from her natal Chiron. At the time when she was released from the hospital, transit Sun was not far from her natal Chiron in Leo, and that could sometimes, I mean, you're talking about Chiron in Leo by itself may manifest in some kind of wounds or suffering, but that in some cases that may have attained perhaps some acclaim or notoriety and recognition. So anyway, and you're talking about her Chiron in the solar sunrise chart is not far from her 6th house cusp of health. And the thing about this is, too, she, I mean, this is somebody, I mean, obviously, I mean, went through a lot. She was stricken with this, I think it was like back in April of 2020, and she was not released from the hospital until like late July from this ordeal. and she had been comatose for a very prolonged period, to say the absolute least. So anyway, again, there's not really a lot more I had to say about this, looking as far as her transits and natal chart placements with this. But again, what's interesting is you're talking about her having that moon in Aquarius, and being in the, really, again, the moon can be about the public, and again, it's not surprising that she was involved in something that gained her some kind of recognition publicly, something that was associated with something very unusual, but also something you could say was innovative, or something very new and unique. This was the first recipient of a double lung transplant in the United States. She's one of the first people ever to have actually received this period. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.